My name is Amanda Wells, and I joined the company in 2001. I apprenticed for a little while and then became an official company member at the end of the year. So I guess '02 would have been my first Joyce season.
I'm Michael Badger, and I first joined Stephen Petronio in, I think it was '99, but I've come and gone from the company a number of times. You know, I did 2 years with the company, took a year off, went back, so this is my third time back with the company now. So kind of on and off for a while.
Oh, wow.
But
Well, I just, to begin with, if you guys wouldn't mind talking a little bit about what it's like to work with Stephen. What his rehearsals have been like, specifically leading up to this season here at the Joyce.
this particular season, I don't know, the two new works that we're doing, I've found the processes to be very different from one another, actually. For Girl in a World, the process was more similar to what we've done in the past, where we basically work, for months creating, what we call the straight phrases, and then, which basically gives all of the dancers a language to be working from, so that we all physically understand sort of the basics.
Kind of defining the vocabulary.
Exactly, exactly.
It's the tone.
It's
of
the tone of the piece. And then he takes those phrases and then, basically throws everything out the window and creates the piece. But we've all got that to work from, that phrase.
Like that phrase gives us meaning. Like we can stray from it, but eventually we'll find ourselves coming back to that home, to that straight
Kind
phrase.
of find the tone again.
Yes.
Exactly, exactly. And for Girl in a World in particular, the straight phrase it's a very strong element in the piece, I would say. With Beauty and the Brute, Beauty and the Brute, there's kind of there's sort of a division between the men and the women.
So it's very gender specific in terms of like femininity versus masculinity.
Which is not necessarily apparent in a lot of his other works.
No.
Definitely not.
Yeah, definitely not.
This is kind of a new route for him then as well, sort of.
Somewhat.
Okay.
Yeah, somewhat. For the boys, we basically didn't even use, we did create a small straight phrase for that piece, but he didn't use it for the boys hardly at all. What he ended up doing with the boys was sort of having us each create our own kind of straight phrase, basically out of an actual verbal vocabulary. So he would say, crumble down, stomp, and each of us would come up with a movement, and that became part of our own straight phrase. So it became much more individualized, which was an interesting process, very, very different from what we've done in the past.
So then everyone kind of had their own individual vocabulary to be working with?
Somewhat. I mean, there was definitely sort of a thread because we were all working from the same words and the same idea.
Okay. We knew that, the woman was going to sort of embody beauty and sleekness and sexiness, and the men would sort of embody more like raw, like animalistic, awkward type of persona. So yes, is much more verbal.
Did you also, the girls, did they also have that vocabulary to work with to make up their own individual phrases?
We actually, I felt like we had a lot of liberty in this piece. We could go out there and have our own improvisational moment, and so that was very freeing. Of course, Stephen, it's yes or no.
Yeah.
And if it's yes, then we figure out a way to codify it and make it work within the context of the piece. But we had definitely, I felt a lot more at liberty in Beauty and the Brute. The other piece, The Story of a Girl in the World, definitely had like a very strong skeletal structure of the piece, and then we sort of filled in the color with deciding to do the pure straight phrase, to do a manipulated version of the straight phrase, to stray, to do some partnering. So there is still freedom within the structure, but there was definitely more of a strong structure that was already in place.
Well, you both kind of talked a little bit about how you played a role in the process of creating the different movements and whatnot. Is a lot of his work collaborative like that? What kind of role specifically do you find that dancers play throughout his repertoire and rehearsals?
It's highly collaborative. I would say it's highly collaborative, but he definitely has the final say. You know, he builds the straight phrases directly on all of our bodies, basically, where we'll be working as a group, and you know, he might take something that sort of came out of my body and then something that came out of Amanda's body.
So are you improvising then while he's...
He is in front of us, and he comes out with a movement, and then
you sort of try to replicate it?
Try to replicate it, but of course we all have different bodies, and we all see different, because he'll go on for maybe like 3 or 4 seconds, and you can't capture it all.
Right.
So we capture as much as we can, and then he'll turn around and see, well, how has everyone interpreted this movement, and then he'll sort of paste from everyone.
Okay.
So it becomes sort of everyone's movement, but it definitely like originated from his body.
Okay.
He's also very interested in what comes out of the present moment, where, it's kind of hard to explain, but he's very interested in the mistakes that happen, where if you're trying to do part of the straight phrase or, you know, the new movement that he just gave you and you do something completely wrong, he might be drawn to that immediately because it's what just happened, and he loves that dynamic.
That's great, though.
If we collide, if we're doing straight phrase material and that's been our direction, but 2 people collide, if it's interesting and if it works with like the way that the energy is moving on stage, then he'll keep it. And those are the most interesting moments, because they're naturally
spontaneous and
Exactly.
a little bit more predictable.
Exactly. And challenging to reproduce.
Yeah.
That. Definitely.
Yes. And this piece, the music is incredible.
The Girl in the World.
Yes, it starts with Anthony. I think he's done we've used, I think, 3 pieces of his music. And then the final piece, Nico Muley composed the music, and it's a really beautiful score.
I've heard that he's really incredible and that the music is incredible.
It is.
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
very dynamic. It's very like emotionally driving. So I find every time we perform it in rehearsal, like the music really helps to drive the piece, and it really helps to add layers. It's a very special score.
Well, the music just seems to really play a role in a lot of this work.
Yeah.
You guys kind of like that, like you go from something like Fisher Splinter then to this Nico piece.
Oh, absolutely.
It just seems very, very broad.
Definitely.
But always very different. Interesting. Did you guys find that kind of influences then the rehearsal and the dancing? You guys are inspired by the music.
Absolutely. It's also a question of whether or not we want to copy the tone color of the music, or do we want to juxtapose? And that's something that we're trying to figure out with the Nico Muley piece, the last piece of This Is a Story.
The other interesting thing with that particular piece, with This Is the Story of a Girl in the World, is that the first 3 songs are all Anthony and the Johnsons, and then that last Nico Muley piece, I think part of why he selected is because Nico actually used some of Anthony's vocals within the piece, which took, I think, both of us quite a while to figure out that it was actually him. But then once you know it's him, you go, oh, okay,
He's a very
that's
distinctive
his voice.
voice.
Yeah,
Yes.
he does. He does.
Both of you have been here many times. What is your favorite thing about coming back to the Joyce and performing here every season?
The Joyce is like the most exciting week of the year. Just every like Monday coming in for spacing, that first day, like you can feel it in your stomach. It's wonderful to be performing in front of family and friends, to be at home. It's an incredible environment. And it's home.
Yeah, I felt that feeling just walking here for this interview, just seeing Stephen Petronio company out on the marquee. It's like every year when I see that, I'm like, okay, here it is.
Well, thank you for sitting down with me, guys, and best of luck this week.
Thank
Have
you.
a great
Thank
run.
you.